This deck is also very good into Maxi. I can actually show you a replay where I actually was able to read Maxi because of the way the game is constructed, and then played around Maxi. It's so crazy because like you can actually check Maxi in your opponent's hand really easily. So like when you have this is like your prank kid hand, right? So like you open, this is exactly the type of hand I want to open in prank kids. The next thing to like you want to consider is that if you know Maxis in the format, it's almost always better to normal summon fancies. Immediately here, I saw my opponent had a delay. So if my opponent didn't have the delay, I would activate pranks, pitch water here. But my opponent had the delay, so I'm like, this guy has Maxi. So if my opponent has Maxi, the best way to play around Maxi is to give your opponent only 2 draws while ending on Butler. And that's exactly what I did. And look, weird. My opponent drops Maxi as expected. Yep, perfect. So like you go Chainlink 1 fancies, they go Chainlink 2 max. Sure, whatever. I send the field spell. I summon the fire because I already have water in my hand. And at this point, I give my opponent 1 draw. I'm going to then make the link 2. Give my opponent the 2nd draw. And then I'm going to chain block the do with fire. But I'm going to choose not to use fire's effect to summon. Because all prank monsters are optional to summon. But you have to apply the first effect, which is to burn. So you apply the first effect, which in this case is burn. But I'll choose not to summon. So not only did I play around Maxi, I also play around Nib because this card is the 4th summon in the deck. So by playing around Maxi, I also play around Nib, and I only give my opponent only 2 draws while having 5 cards in my hand. The reason why it's fire is mainly because you want to put your opponent at a threshold where you can kill them with 5300 plus 2000. My opponent only got 2 draws. So yeah, they went +1 off their Maxi, but I went +2. You give him Pot of Greed. You gotta understand that I gave him 2 draws instead of 100 draws. Like, you know what I'm saying? I could just choose to pass it all. Pot of Greed is fine because
you're trading the Pot of Greed with the 2 interruptions.
Yeah, with two Raigekis and follow up. I'm like +1 in card advantage against him right now. He'll draw for turn, so we'll be even in card advantage. So we're both 5 to 5 cards, or like 7 to 7. But the idea is that like a card that everyone calls it the God card, like the card that you drop, you just auto win, and people are saying like, oh my god, your opponent drops Maxi on me, wah, I'm crying like a little baby, I lose the game. But that's not necessarily true, because almost every mid-range deck in like the game has a way to play around Maxi if you're smart enough to do it. But a lot of people just eat Maxi because they don't know how to play, and that's just a fact.
I have hundreds of replay of me taking the Maxi challenge and still win.
It's like it's more nuanced than that. It's not just like Maxi drop, you lose the game. It almost never works that way. But I think the idea is that people look at it as just a what do you call it? You know, zero-sum game where you win or you lose, but that's just never true. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And like this is exactly it. So I mean, this saves me. I didn't give him a lot of draws. I still end on card advantage. He ends up playing a trap deck. And so I mean, he's gonna get absolutely murked. But yeah. The thing is, simulators also allows you to read Maxi too, which is like kind of like a plus and a minus. Like I read this guy's Maxi like this guy was playing open-handed. Like, it was that obvious. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, to be honest, when I draw Maxi, I just put my toggle off and I have to be mad. Yeah, I have to be mad quick then when I have to put it on.
And you're probably thinking like, oh my god, Maxi makes the game more mid-range, but that's not true too, because people are still playing combo decks and still doing well with combo decks even in a Maxi format, right? Like, I think it's not as simple as just saying like, oh, the game goes this way or this way for sure. Yo, you want to show the virtual world. Show the virtual world replay. The virtual replay. Yeah, where you played around, where you literally played around, where you ate Maxi, and then you played around like 3 hand traps afterwards. So he's playing virtual world, right? Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's watch this replay. I mean, I've always been Team Maxi. I've never like. I mean, Maxi like. I think like everyone always complain about Maxi, but at some point like. I don't know. It is what it's fine. I don't know. The card sucks, but like, what are you gonna do? Complain until it gets banned? Like, I mean, what? You're just not gonna play Master Duel?
My opponents drop the side. Set 1 pass. Okay, which deck plays the side? There are not many decks which can play the side. It's not a mirror.
Yeah.
It's not a mirror because otherwise he would have set some cards. Because when you break in the mirror, you set some cards. Okay. It's not Striker because you don't set cards in Striker, so there are very few of decks, and I'm thinking about the 3 Brigade Zodiac or stuff like that, okay? So that's my first That's the first thing I'm doing. Like, I'm actually thinking he's playing like or a rogue deck or he's playing a 3 brigade version of the deck. And he drops Max C here. Okay, so at this point, I have one game plan. I can play through that Maxi and I can still OTK through that by summoning a CW, so Crystal Wing, and OTK safely through the Maxi. Or if I get interrupted, I can end with the VFD because my hands are low.
Yes, there's also another important thing to mention here. Your opponent instant drop Max C. I think he's trying to make you pass turn. Like, I don't think he cares enough about drawing off Max C. He wants you to actually pass turn. So that means the set card has to be a card that's set, that can be flipped up, and there has to be another card he can normal to like make a play. And the only deck that does that is literally Tri Brigade or Prank Kids. And I don't think it's Prank Kids, because if it was a Prank Kid, he would have linked it off, right? So I mean he's not playing around Gamma, but like he has to wait for a first guy to summon, and then wait for Maxi after, and then you Maxi afterwards. You could wait for that. That's fine. But I think this guy literally needs Nesh to pass to stand a chance.
The game gave him some time. So what does it mean? Like, if your opponent,
it's probably impermanence. Your opponent has imperm.
Yes.
And
so
it didn't prompt you before when there was a monster on the board. So by popping the monster, letting him search, and on resolution of the search, there was some time lag. That means your opponent has impermanence. So you're reading these like toggles basically, which is like something that like obviously like you can only do in this game. Like you can't do that IRL. So it's an auto sim moment. Yeah,
I'm obviously gonna take advantage of this. So I special Nyan. I don't care if he has 20, 13 cards. The only card I lose here is Droplet. So I'm taking the risk of Droplet because otherwise I would never win.
Legal cheating.
And I summon 75, and then I turn 75 into Zeus to play around Chalice plus Impermanence or stuff like that. I let him use all the effects because I don't want to shotgun my VFD because, as I said, I read the Imper in his end, so it makes no sense. He used the Imper, so I chain Calamities, and I call... What do I call? Wind. Why do I call Wind? Because I don't give a fuck about this Tri Brigade Engine. Because their Tri Brigade on board are gonna be Wind anyways. The only cards I care are the cards which can mix it in his deck, which are the Bird Engine. If he has the Bird Engine, it might actually be an issue for me if he summons multiple birds on the board. So it talents from the end to get rid of my recovery, because I have no recovery in the graveyard. So this might actually makes a lot of sense, because he cannot steal, because he cannot link, he probably doesn't have a monster in the extra deck to link with, and also, by getting rid of my recovery, he might actually survive the next. And he passes. And look at his graveyard. His graveyard is full of birds.
It actually turns out to be birds, yeah.
Because it's one of the few decks which can just set and pass. So I just enter in battle phase and attack.
And that's letting the guy draw like 15 cards too. It's like crazy.